We are now recording.
All right, well, welcome. I call the February meeting of the Equity Board to order at 6:07 p.m. And due to the hybrid format of today's meeting, I'd like to start by providing some guidelines. This is a reminder that the meeting is being recorded. We have participants attending in person and others who may be attending by computer or by phone. For all meeting attendees, speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. I think that's a growth area for us. If applicable, mute your mic when not speaking. If having technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device or use the call-in information in the meeting invitation. And now we will move on to attendance. And so Dale, can I look to you for that, please?
You can. Let me just go right back. Okay, Christina Abonce. I guess I'm gonna do them alphabetically anyways. Will be late tonight, so not currently here. Lucrecia Choto, currently unexcused absence. Tony Curry, currently unexcused. Varnica Doka, currently unexcused. Shay Fleming,
I'm here.
is here. Lorna Gilmore, excused absence. Karthik Kashinath. Ray Manahan, excuse me, Ray.
I'm here.
Preeti Modipan.
Here.
And Kelly Munn, also excused absence.
All right, so now next on the agenda is public comments. And public comments are an important part of our public process. We take them seriously and factor them into the decisions we make. And Dale, do we have folks signed up for public comment?
We do. Lindsay Pinkston is here to provide at least one public comment. Come on over.
If I just sit and we come up.
You can stay there if you'd like. The camera will find you regardless of where you. Oh, you're right. That does make sense.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Well, thank you. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Lindsay Pinkston. I'm the Executive Director of Highlands Council, and we are the community building leg of Issaquah Highlands governance. So responsible for communications, our newspaper, all of our events, community groups, and also managing our facility, Blakely Hall. And I wanted to come and kind of let you know what we do and invite you to some of our upcoming things. We haven't seen a lot of members of this group coming to our events, and so we would love to see you. Currently, we have over 50 events, community events on our calendar for this year. Those are all public events open to everyone. Nothing that we do up there is exclusive to Issaquah Highlands residents. Everything is for the good of the entire community. And one of the reasons for that, just so you understand where we're coming from, a big part of our funding comes from the commercial properties in Issaquah Highlands. So the more people we bring up to Issaquah Highlands from outside is more business for our stakeholders. So there is a good reason why we really, not only do we like to have people up there, but it's good for us. So this year, some of those events we do some fun events. So we have a Super Bowl party. We do Halloween events. We have teen events like a flashlight egg hunt where we send middle schoolers out in the dark to hunt for eggs. We do some markets for vendors. We also do art programming. So we have a gallery in Blakely Hall. And so we rotate our gallery exhibitions monthly or every couple of months. And so those are really exciting and a really great place for us to exhibit some culture and have just something new. We also do open mic nights and art workshops. And then we do some cultural programming. And we have a Global Grub and Groove series that we do every summer that celebrates different cultures. And everything we do on the cultural side is dependent on somebody bringing that to us. So, we don't put on events by ourselves. We might put on a Super Bowl event, but we're not going to put on trying to think of a celebration, Indian New Year. Or we do Indian Independence Day every other year, but that's put on by several volunteers that are of the culture. So when I say we're putting it on, I'm using we in the global sense of our team and all of the volunteers that are there. And then we also have 15 community groups that meet at Blakely Hall, and those are open to all as well. I mean, it runs the gamut from a poker night group that meets once a month to we have a meditation club that meets every week, and different things like that. So it's a whole line. We have a lot of kids groups as well. And again, those are open to everybody. But upcoming, I did want to invite you especially to our March gallery, which is called Zaniroos, and that means Today's Woman. It's an art exhibit of Persian artists that are going to be showing art that demonstrates the power of women today in Iran. And then on the 10th of March, in addition to coming in and seeing the gallery, we're also having a celebration of Nowruz, which is the Persian New Year, and a vendor bazaar of Persian vendors. So we're really excited. This is our first time doing anything to celebrate Persian culture. And I think it's going to be incredible. The Arts Commission gave us a nice grant that is really helping to pay for some fabulous art and some performers. So. And then in April, our gallery will convert to autism awareness, and we have a really great young autistic artist who's going to be showing in the gallery. And then on the 4th of April, we have a reception open to the public, and we'll also have a reading by a local author who writes stories about characters with neurodiverse backgrounds. So it's a very cool kind of a kid's book. She writes about animals with neurodiversity. And then on the 20th of April, we're hosting a teddy bear tea for autism awareness for kids 5 and under with their teddy bears. So that's really cute. I also wanted to invite you on February 25th. I'm probably more excited about this than I have been about anything in 5 years. We're hosting a screening of the film Join or Die. So I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is a movie about why it is so important for people to join groups, whether it be a book club or a dinner club or Kiwanis or church or wherever you find your group, but why it's so important to the health of our country. So I've pre-screened the movie and it's really amazing. So I encourage you all to come out. Awesome. Oh, and then for the summer, the cultures we're celebrating this summer in June, we're doing a celebration of Eid al-Adha, which is Muslim culture. And then in August, we're doing Mexican culture. And instead of celebrating Juneteenth this year with the Global Bread and Brew, because we don't want to conflict with what the city is doing, we're looking at doing a vendor market instead. Since we have a lot of experience with that, we thought we'd do a Black-owned business vendor market.
Awesome.
So
Great.
And I'm happy to send kind of more information with dates and things.
That would be super.
I was going to print things out, but our printer got killed in a pipe burst at Blakely Hall. So we flooded and our printer got killed.
Oh, can we ask questions?
I mean, technically, no. So,
Really?
yeah,
Oh,
not during public comment. But if you're going to stick around,
I'll stick
if you
around.
want to propose something for other business, we can absolutely do that.
It's 2 hours long.
Well, I was definitely going to stay for David's talk. So
Yeah.
You could,
I'll be here.
do work in between agenda.
Yeah, we could also do a quick break between agenda items if you want to catch Lindsay before she leaves.
Okay. Yeah.
I got some explicit feedback about my not allowing us to engage in questions during public comment. So well, we're sticking to it.
Okay, good.
Robert's Rules of Order.
Well,
Thank you.
I went to the Valentine's Day pop-up market.
Oh,
on
did you?
Saturday.
Yeah.
It was really cute to walk around.
Yeah, we're really having a good time with those.
Great. And I'll follow up with Lindsay to get all those dates too, and send that out to our group as well so we can get them around. Before Dave, there is one. No, there's one item before you. Are there two? We actually we have to approve our minutes and then we have an item right above you on the agenda, but awesome.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Okay.
Great. So next up is approval of minutes, and I'll give you all a moment to scan the minutes to see if there's any changes, and then call for what is it called?
Motion.
A motion to approve. Okay, once you've had a chance to review, I'd like to ask for a member to make a motion to approve.
I motion to approve.
Okay. Let's see. So is there any discussion? Oh, wait for a second. I need a second.
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to discuss anything in the minutes or have any edits to recommend or propose?
I just have a comment. You guys mentioned that wonderful event that the Baha'is had. So 3 of us were invited, and they were so kind. Tony, as you know, has an issue with his family because of COVID, but they set up a virtual computer so he could join, and that was really nice. And I was there in person, and we had some really good dialogue about Issaquah. They're so consistent with getting engaged with our equity board. So I just want to call them out as a organization. And we had the opportunity to join their last event. That was nice.
Okay. Are you suggesting we add anything to the minute around that? I'm just checking.
There's probably going to be more events, and there are regular members here. So if we can get other people besides me to go to these events hosted by the Baha'i for maybe 1 or 2 other equity board members, that would be nice. The only comment that.
Can I?
But no changes.
Okay, no changes. For
Yeah.
minutes. Okay.
Let's see, any discussion or edits proposed? Okay, then, let's see, I will proceed to consider the minutes approved with no edits.
Great.
Alrighty, and next we have Ray beginning our opening process with an icebreaker to
I
initiate.
have a question about this. I completely forgot I was doing this. Was there backdrop with this? Like, what am I supposed to? We're going to pass this around from each board member to each board member monthly, right?
Mhm.
It's just to initiate a conversation about
Yep.
anything.
Ideally, it would be something more related to activating our engagement around equity, our equity conversations for tonight. So last month we had the sort of question on what is it that you love about equity work?
Okay.
You might pick a slightly, maybe a different question. When did but it can be lighter if you'd like it to be lighter than that.
I'll try to stick to the equity topic. And can I talk about what you and I discussed earlier before everybody got here?
Yeah, I think potentially, I was going to say, Ray, if you didn't have a question ready, I thought a good one might be, when is a time that a conversation around equity arose during your past few weeks since we last met?
Oh, yeah. Well, 2 opportunities had happened. So a member of the city of Issaquah Human Services Department reached out to me because Hannah Roberts, she leads that group within Human Services, and she had a meeting with community leadership, and their focus was around health equity. So she got me involved in that. So there's opportunities for our board members to attend meetings that are hosted by different groups under the city of Issaquah. It can be Parks and Recreation. It could be Health and Human Services. It could be Human Resources. We should be aware of those meetings that are happening. If there's a board member that can sit in those and just listen, is there a topic related to equity that we might not have the answer to at that meeting, but why not bring it back to this group and have a discussion? So I sat in one of those meetings, which is hosted by Hannah, and she invited, interestingly enough, folks in the Issaquah community who are focused on healthcare. So we had some good discussions, and I connected her to a resource up at the Swedish Issaquah that I was aware of, working on some equity work. So if there's ways for us to be involved in meetings that are hosted by leadership within the city of Issaquah, representing other departments. I highly recommend that we do that and bring it up as a talking point, whatever we learned at those meetings, and share with us. Like I said, we might not have the answers, but if it's equity related, why not present it to this board? Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was an in-depth response. No one else's response needs to be as in-depth, but yeah, we literally just had the conversation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when is the time that a conversation around equity came up since in your work or your life since we last met? A couple of them for you.
Cool. Questions around that?
Yeah, Shay.
Oh, I can share, if that's what we're doing here, just to make sure.
Yeah.
I recently had my region team meeting for Nestle Purina Pet Care. We talked about equity when it comes to pet care and how some areas tend to have more access to veterinary care and how we can impact that. And of course, we ended up getting some new leadership. So I was able to kind of pick his brain on our plans for how we will address some of the newer veterinary clinics that are coming in, how we're supporting people at any vet conferences that we're having. So that way we can make sure that we're giving everyone all the options that they need, and we're actually supporting our communities in the right way. Going beyond just handing out pet food.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Two board members left.
Yeah, I can go next. Yeah. My wife's starting a new job on climate equity and climate justice with the federal government. And I work as a climate scientist. So,
Yeah.
we've just had some juicy conversations in the last few weeks around what that means and at what scale. I work more in sort of global climate change,
Yeah.
and she's focusing on the Pacific Northwest. So, what that looks like. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Perfect.
Yeah, and I can wrap us up. So just recently in my office, we're working on bringing in a training on allyship and just having conversations about what does it mean to be an ally? How do you disrupt harmful behaviors in meetings, things like microaggressions? How do you acknowledge them and heal from them and move past them and become a stronger organization once you work through it? So it was just really interesting to hear like the model of working through that whole process so you come out stronger at the end. So it was just kind of a really eye-opening conversation.
Yeah. As the board liaison, I'll share as well. I've been it almost seems like month after month, especially as I stepped into this role and then inherited some different work items. The cultural and religious calendar, which was just approved on Monday night at the council meeting, permanentized, has probably been one of the places where over the last 3 to 4 months, I've had some of the richest conversations about equity, about diversity, inclusion, and equity, the difference between those words, how we can conflate them all when we just refer to them as DEI, and also just given our greater global climate right now, conversations on religion at work are a fascinating place to stretch your empathy, stretch your ability to really connect. And that's been some of the richest opportunity to be in those conversations. Jeff has been in some of those conversations. It's just been a really great space. So, yeah. Thanks for accepting my impromptu question. During other business, we'll find someone to volunteer for next month. Great.
Okay, thank you all for participating in that opening that we've tested out last month, and now I think we've got it in standard rotation on our agendas. So the next item before, no, I'm sorry, there's one more.
It's fine.
You got up here and everything.
Yeah, so we have a deal with the staff report, updates on actions taken at the January meeting.
Yep, so there's nothing, this is not as robust maybe as our upcoming ones will be, especially we have two groups from staff coming here to get our advisory muscles working this evening. But from our January meeting, one of the things we decided we wanted to institute was a time for me to share back with the group as a result of the previous meeting, what has changed in the way that, we're doing business, or what was the impact of our conversation. One of the big things that came out of our January meeting was the approval of our work plan, and the addition of 2 items to the work plan that were not on it at the start of the meeting, but are now on it as we look forward at the rest of the year. One of them is around the budget. So the board advising on a more equitable, on potential more equitable approaches to budgeting for the upcoming 2025-2026 budget. And the second one is data systems and our approach to data at the city. And so that has also been added to our work plan as well for the second half of the year. And so you'll see those things not just show up on the work plan, but also show up in conversations starting in Q2. So starting in just a couple of months. So that's the near-term impact of our conversation in January.
Yeah.
I have one other thing to add. Councilmember DiMichelle reached out ahead of tonight's meeting and just wanted to share her gratitude for the incredible work of this group on the cultural and religious calendar, that not only you're advising on the front end, but also you're advising and feedback in December, and just sent a big congratulations to this group as in part of your participation for that. So that is my brief staff report.
Great, thank you. I feel like we're just rolling through these agenda topics, so I don't think it's quite time to take a break yet. So I would invite David Reedy to talk with us about resilience hubs.
Awesome. And yeah, just so excited I couldn't sit back there and wait. I had to jump up. It's very exciting hearing y'all talk this afternoon, and I think I can even say what good timing it is that I'm at this meeting. We'll be able to talk about equity board members getting involved in city projects. We'll be able to talk about climate justice and climate change. And there's even space to talk about pets tonight. So during my presentation. So there's some great things coming.
Wow.
Before I jump into, first off, my name is David Reedy. I'm the sustainability coordinator with the city. I've been before the equity board before. And before I dived into the resilience hub topic, I did want to just loop back with y'all about the sustainable purchasing policy, which I brought before the board, to let you know that it got approved by the senior leadership team yesterday, and it'll be signed into an administrative policy by the mayor in the next week. And so then we get to start implementing it and exploring with staff really across the city, across departments. What does it mean to think about sustainability when it comes to purchases? What does it mean to think about social equity when it comes to purchases, and really dive into upcoming purchases and procurement? So that's going to be a really challenging and exciting moment. And I wanted to thank the Equity Board for your input in the creation of that policy. And in the feedback around the implementation guide. A lot of y'all's advice and thoughts kind of made it in there. So we're really excited, and we'll see how it goes. And now to dive into my main topic of the night, resilience hubs. So tonight I figure we'll be talking to y'all first. What is a resilience hub? What do we mean by this? I'm gonna give a little bit of background on the Issaquah Resilience Hub project, talk about progress to date, and then start the discussion on goals and evaluation criteria. And that's really where I'm asking for feedback for tonight. So the input that I'll be seeking tonight is for feedback on the developed project goals, feedback on criteria that we intend to use to evaluate potential resilience hub sites, and then as well any general feedback recommendations for staff to integrate as this progress project progresses, and I'm happy, of course, to answer questions as well. So I throw around this word, what resilience hubs, I invite people to join this project. And one of the big questions, what does this even really mean? So I have a definition on the board provided by the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, which is the main organization that has been kind of pushing this concept of resilience hubs nationwide. And this language around resilience hubs really came out of Baltimore about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. But to really narrow it down, what we're talking about with resilience hubs are trusted community spaces, physical locations that can support community members before, during, and after disruptive events, namely where the Sustainability Directors Network comes in, climate change impacts, but it's not only climate change impacts. So thinking around physical trusted spaces that can support community members during wildfire smoke events, or during flooding, or during a pandemic. That was one that came up, right? So where can people go to get that support leading up to an event, during an event, and after? And one of the things that's really important in this consideration, and one of the things I think that can separate it from a lot of emergency management practices otherwise, is that, well, emergency management does this too, but 90% of the time, we're not in one of these disruptive events necessarily, right? A lot of the work around these resilience hubs is thinking about how do we build the social connections? How do we build the understanding, the resources, and really strengthen our community so that we can weather these disruptive events better when they actually occur. And then when they do occur, these resilience hubs can transition into support centers, and then also after the event support community members as they bounce back from those events. So the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, they have broken it down into these 5 areas of or categories of how resilience hubs operate. And all of these, the idea is that all of these pieces really play a role into the operations of these physical locations, right? So the first one is resilient programming and services, thinking that a resilience hub is more than just a physical space, but a space that promotes community preparedness. It improves residents' health and well-being. All of that is going to play a role when those disruptions occur. Resilient structure, thinking about, is the building safe? Is the building equipped to support community members on extreme heat days or on extreme cold days, right? Resilient power systems. So thinking about, is the building able to continue to operate if power is lost, right? If there's an outage event and our community members need support, it's the ideal is a resilient power system so that that physical location and the programming that can occur at that location can continue to operate. Resilient communication, so thinking about before an event, during an event, and after event, during all of that, being able to communicate with our community members and the folks that we're hoping to serve with these sites. And then finally, resilient operations. You can have the best resilience hub in the world, but if you don't have the personnel to staff it, you don't have the funding for it, you don't have the plans and processes in place to run that facility and those programs, it's not going to work. So resilient operations is really key to making it all work together. And one of the other things I want to note about this idea of resilience hubs is the goal of them is to support all Issaquah community members, but it's also really tailored on those most vulnerable to disruptive events and climate change, right? So thinking about those who might have the most trouble or most challenges in a flood situation or in a wildfire smoke day because they don't have somewhere to go, or because their own home might not be equipped for that, right? Or maybe they're just new to the city and they just don't know where those social connections are. If we do this project right, they might know, well, I can always go to XYZ Resilience Hub, right? So there's examples of this across the country. And I would say that this is, again, a fairly newer concept within kind of this framing of it, and there's no, slam dunk example, right? Each community is trying to figure out what it means for them, trying to figure out how to implement it correctly. So I have a map up of resilience hubs across the city of Baltimore. Because I'm a Boston native, I threw up Cambridge, Massachusetts Community Center and Resilience Hub picture. And then the last one is Bainbridge Island. And Bainbridge Island, those are actually disaster hubs. They're not, even in their mind, they don't think these disaster hubs really rise to the level of resilience hubs.
Mm.
But really the point there is thinking about this as an ongoing long-term process of how can we improve our community facilities? How can we improve our locations that serve community members across the city over the long term to prepare folks for disruptions when they occur.
Mm.
So, background on our project specifically. The city of Issaquah applied for a solar plus storage grant application and was awarded it. And that is specifically to support us doing that resilient power system planning. And with that grant, we will be able to do some community engagement, and we'll be developing solar and battery storage site designs for potential resilience hub sites. When we got this, we said, why are we just doing this on its own? Let's nestle it within a broader resilience hub project. And so staff were able to attend some workshops on this concept in October and December. And then we had a kickoff meeting in November where we did roughly what I'm doing today, which is talk about what does resilience hub mean? What could it look like? Things like that. Bringing in together partners from across the city, bringing in city staff from across departments. And Lindsay and Brian here with us today are part of that conversation, as you'll see. Then in December, we took a step back and said, all right, now that we've built some common understanding around what a resilience hub might be, let's talk about what our goals are for an Issaquah specific resilience hub project. And then the most recent meeting, the January meeting, was to discuss what are going to be the criteria that we want to use to evaluate potential resilience hub sites? Because not every site is going to be a good resilience hub. And if we have 500 potential resilience hubs, it makes it challenging to prioritize resources. So really thinking, how can we be focused in our efforts here? And the pictures on the bottom are just an example of our goal development exercise that we did in this very room in December. So this is showing, this is the table, who's at the table right now for the Resilience Hub project. So on the left, you'll see there's a lot of folks across the city that roughly fall into those three departments. The Highlands Council, we have the Circle Community Connections, Issaquah Food and Clothing Bank, Issaquah School District, and we're super lucky to have one of the Equity Board members, Lorna Gilmore, on as a representative, along with a few other folks from the school district. And so the idea with this is to bring together folks who are invested in this concept of providing support for community members, who have programming, who have physical locations, not all of them do, but who have physical locations, and who can help us shape this project moving forward. Thinking about our next steps, we are going to have these regular monthly meetings to talk about a whole host of different topics: site selection, what does operation and a disruption mean, how do we look at resilience power systems, things like that. And we're going to be developing an Issaquah resilience hub strategy that is really tailored to what does this idea mean for our community. And then at the same time, we'll be implementing our solar plus storage grant. So we're trying to run ahead with what we have funding for and what we can implement now, while also taking the time to do this right. And then at the end, community engagement and outreach, because again, we want to do this right. So before I dive into what we're asking for feedback on, just thinking back again on the role of the city, it's a little bit complicated, because we came into this with an idea of what we could do. And there's it's a delicate conversation because not always resilience hub sites are not always city sites. So essentially, some of those sites, some of our city sites could be potential resilience hubs, and so we might be a site host. But we're also, I'm viewing our role as a facilitator and a convener, bringing together these partners to say, hey, you know, a community partner might actually have this trusted physical facility that can play this role in the community. And therefore, how can we best support each other? What can the city bring to the table? What can other partners bring to the table to help really enhance that space and that existing programming? And then also the Solar Plus Storage Grant. We did get that grant, and we're doing that. We're implementing that to look at potential sites, and that is likely to include some city facilities, but it might also, again, look at some of those community facilities as well. So I'm going to dive into the first thing I'm going to ask for comments on or feedback on, which is the collaboratively developed goals. So coming out of that December Resilience Hub partner meeting, we had folks put up sticky notes about what they want to see as part of this project. And then city staff kind of took that and boiled it down to these 3 overarching goals that we are hoping can guide this work moving forward. And these goals are not set in stone. This is, again, very early in the process. So we are happy to fine tune them, tweak them, really work on them, as well as the next criteria to make sure that we are moving forward in the right way. So our 3 goals are establish a network of resilience hubs that offer services that support community members' basic needs, connection, and reliable information during times of non-emergencies and emergencies. Build on the existing work of partners by augmenting services, communication, and collaboration. And finally, increase the resilience of the whole community while providing tailored support for those most at risk, including but not limited to seniors, youth, unhoused neighbors, and multicultural families. So before I dive into the next piece of this, I would happily accept any comments, feedback, thoughts on these goals, and then also I'm happy to answer any questions on the project itself.
I have a question.
All year.
Okay. Resilience hubs. So I'm still wrapping my mind around that concept. So to me, it sounds like a community center that has some of these special features around like solar or power generation, you know, air conditioning, heating, maybe some facilities for shelter, things like that. Is that kind of a shorthand way of thinking about it?
Yeah, I think that's generally a good way to think about it. You know, some of the folks who at USDN who have piloted this concept, one of the I guess jokes they make is that they're using the language of Resilience Hub is a way to bring people into the fold and get funding and support, right, from FEMA, from state governments, things like that, to really fund just the best community centers that can be, right? So it's not necessary, and these resilience hubs don't necessarily look the same even across the city, right? So if we were to look for, you know, if the senior center becomes a resilience hub, that's not going to serve every single community member. That's more tailored towards the senior population, right? So thinking through, not all resilience hubs look the same, but essentially it's, you know, a really excellent community center that's resilient in the face of climate change.
Do you guys have in your group, do you have that what if conversation? What if, like, I'll give an example, Issaquah Creek overflows and there's homes right there that people need to find shelter, get food. And another example is like Cougar Mountain, that road that connects residents up there gets shut down because of snow or something. So when you think about creating these community hubs, are you getting to that point already?
Not yet, but that is where we hope to go. And as you saw in the list of organizations, a number of emergency management groups are a part of this, both King County and within the city. And as a sneak preview for the folks in the room who are going to be in those meetings, I think our April conversation is going to be a scenario where we actually have, what if there is a wildfire and something happens? What does the resilience hub look like in that situation? And again, thinking that not every resilience hub is going to operate the same in that situation, depending on what the center is or what that space is. So I would say we haven't done those yet, but that is in the plans for the future.
I had a question around, yeah, just the scale of resources and services and facilities in a resilience hub that serves people in the non-emergency situations, because it seems like by definition, emergencies are fairly rare. Well, hopefully not. Well, hopefully, but that is changing with climate change. But it seems like you're probably not going to be using a resilience hub every single day and maybe 10% of the days of a year. So what does it look like for the remaining 90%?
Yes, and that goes to kind of the first of those 5 pieces of resilience hub. So thinking about resilient programming, right? So generally, the generally accepted best practice here is that for these resilience hubs to be trusted community spaces, they need to have things going on in that 90% of the time when an emergency is not happening, right? And so what that looks like, again, might be different depending on resilience hubs, but it's programming that builds community connection. It's programming that supports community members to think about, what do I do in an emergency? It might be programming that improves the health and well-being of those community members, right? And again, right, the senior center, for instance, might have different types of programming than the garage, say, if the garage is one of those, or a different facility across the city. Does that get at your question?
Would you like us to see if there's any feedback on the goals?
Yeah, if you have any feedback on these goals as written, I'd be happy to take that. And then, and also I will say, if you want to submit, you sit with it and want to submit comments to me later, that is also perfectly works for me.
So I have multicultural family. That the phrase, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so that phrase was, I believe, used in a few of the sticky notes. And the idea, and this might not be the right wording for this, but the idea is making sure that a resilience hub space is welcoming and inclusive to folks and trusted by folks who might be newer to the community, or who might not speak English as a first language, or who might have different backgrounds, right? And so making sure that we're not just catering to some of our population in Issaquah, but making sure that our spaces are more inclusive.
So I appreciate the sentiment behind it. That phrase,
Sure.
it's just got something that doesn't feel right to it. So I'd encourage you to explore other words there.
Excellent.
And then I guess to raise a question around the what ifs, I wonder if there could be some mention of like geography, right? The risks due to geography or something. I mean, it's not limited to, so there's openness there, but it seems like that could be a critical thing to.
Yeah, that's something that we could either look to work into some of these, or potentially add a 4th goal as well.
Any other thoughts before David moves on to the next slide?
All right. So the next few slides, there's a lot of words on them. I do apologize for that in advance. I threw together these slides the day we had this meeting to talk about criteria, because that's when the
That's
board
when
materials were
They
due.
were due, yeah.
Maybe even post due. So again, my apologies here, but essentially the way we split this out, and in this was in our January Resilience Hub conversation, we had a whole host of potential criteria that had been submitted by partners that we pulled from the USDN website, and folks went around giving them sticky notes or stickies saying, we think this is an essential near-term criteria for resilience hubs. This is an essential medium to long-term criteria for resilience hubs. And then this is an ideal situation, right? So it might not be an essential piece of a resilience hub moving forward in Issaquah, but it is something that we would like to explore, right? And so these were the ones, these first 7 were the criteria. The first 7 are the criteria relating to, these are what we think are essential near-term aspects to think about when we are evaluating potential resilience hubs, right? And I will note the tool that we will use to take this and evaluate potential resilience hubs has not been developed yet. So that is in the works. But again, wanted to get early feedback from the equity board. So to summarize them, the first is that the Resilience Hub is a welcoming and trusted community space already that can be transitioned to a Resilience Hub with limited effort. The infrastructure of the Resilience Hub is safe and accessible. The ability to operate the Resilience Hub has the ability to operate successfully in an emergency via established and reliable communication networks in coordination with existing emergency management plans. The facility has adequate operational support in place for near-term Resilience Hub functions. Planning and design of Resilience Hubs includes input from marginalized groups. The commitment and support for current and expanded, some of this is phrased wrong, but there is commitment and support for current and expanded Resilience Hub functions. And the Resilience Hub has defined performance and outcome expectations. And that last one, after talking about it, might be not necessarily an evaluation criteria, but a guiding principle. We have to workshop that one a bit. But so I would say these. Do you think I should run through all of them before asking for comments, or stop on each slide? Do you have a preference?
Maybe run through them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So thinking about medium-term criteria, here you can see that flexible energy infrastructure, that resilient energy system, a network of volunteers and community partnerships to support ongoing operations and expanded operations during disruptive events, adequate HVAC systems for air filtration, heating, and cooling, access to and/or the ability to house resources and supplies, and then security infrastructure to provide a secure space. Lucretia? Oh, Lucretia, I'm so sorry.
No, you were right, actually. It's Lucrecia. But
Ah,
thank you for that, for the effort of pronouncing my name correctly. I apologize if you've already said this before I arrived, but is there any, what's the word I'm looking for? What have you planned for the grid not being able to provide all that you are trying to accomplish? When you say adequate HVAC system, air filtration, heating, cooling, etc., and access to all of this stuff, the first thing that comes to my mind is that's great, but what if the system can't take on all of these new apparatuses? Because my understanding is that the system is currently built for what we have historically needed to provide, which is typically heat, right? But now we're adding air conditioning in months when we in the past have never needed that. And so I guess my question is, what sort of conversations have you had? What sort of plans do you have to make sure that the system that the PG&E or whomever, PSE, can actually provide for us what we may need as the environment changes and we are leaning more towards heating up? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So I think to answer that, we haven't had any specific conversations on it yet because as we select potential resilience hub sites, that's when we can start diving into what is the energy system in place for that building currently, and what might be the needs for that facility moving forward if it doesn't have, say, cooling potential, right? What is that going to do to the electrical capacity or infrastructure for that facility? I would also say that's where that essential medium to long-term criteria number 1 comes in, thinking about resilient and flexible energy infrastructure. So if we were to support a potential resilience hub with a solar and battery backup system, right, that in theory is not going to help that facility operate indefinitely with expanded equipment, but it should hopefully allow that facility to operate during a disruption when the power might be out, right? And so that's where those two pieces really get paired together, thinking about how do we support the expansion of the energy infrastructure at that facility, and then how do we also dive into what does that facility need equipment-wise to make sure that it can really support community needs in the face of climate emergencies and other disruptions.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your response.
Yeah. And then the final ideal ones, there is kind of a catch-all for other facility infrastructure opportunities that includes things like showers, commercial kitchens, loading docks, quiet rooms, etc. Space for sheltering, including those who may require care for health professionals. Thinking about making sure the resilience hub space is actively used. And then finally, infrastructure for distribution of community resources. So these were the ones that within the January meeting were tagged as ideal conditions. And that's all I have. And so I'd welcome any other feedback on these developed criteria and or on the project itself before I turn it over to my good friends in the Parks Department.
One question.
Yeah.
With your strategies, do you consider the composition of today's existing residences of Issaquah? So, we have north of 40,000 residences.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was a need for one of these facilities, I imagine somebody who is a household that nobody speaks English. So how are they made aware of the services that's provided to them? Is a translator needed for a specific group? So as you plan for those, I know Issaquah is primarily white still, but I think the next demographic is Asian, which is very large because there's a lot of Asian countries. So if there's a need for that might be something to consider, that a translator may be needed on site to help them get acclimated to this facility that's being created.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great comment. And I think when it comes to thinking about how that fits into the criteria, right, when we're looking at a potential resilience hub site, we could say, right, do they already have these services? And does this type of structure already exist at the facility? And if not, is that something that we think is really important to have at that facility moving forward? And if so, how do we make it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that goes into kind of those questions around how potential sites are currently operating. And then as we get to the point of picking sites, what investments and what support can we really wrangle together to make it so these things that we're not going to compromise on actually happen in the future?
Yeah. And I don't know if those other resilience hubs were created that you shared that are happening in other cities, the scenarios played out in the there's a need for example translator because there's a certain population that needed it more than others.
Right. Many of them definitely want translation services or think that's an important part of the operations.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a question on, what sort of data do we have from emergencies of the past that we've dealt with here in Issaquah? And how that data might help inform the choices that you might be making?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't have data to share with you right now, but I will say there's a lot of different data we can pull into this, right? So thinking about from our human services department, who are the people that they are working with, who might be best to, who might take advantage of this, right? Similarly, the school district and Eastside Fire and Rescue, who have a lot of those strong community connections, right? Who are those folks? What do they need? And how could these resilience hubs best support that? When it comes to emergency management, working with our emergency manager, working with our recreation team who runs some of our own facilities, working with King County's emergency manager and thinking around what are the climate hazards here and what are the other potential hazards and how are our spaces currently used? How what is the ability of that space to operate effectively in, say, a situation where Issaquah Creek floods, or looking at floodplains and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity to pull in a lot of data and a lot of considerations into this question, especially as we're starting to get to the point of what resilience hubs do we want to try and move forward with, and then when we start operating that resilience hub, what does it even look like, right?
Thank you.
There's a question from Shay in the
Yes,
chat.
missed that. I don't think I can see. Well,
Shay, do you want to unmute?
I can speak it if that's okay. So my question was, you mentioned earlier that there was room for like pet support. So my question kind of entailed what that would look like as well, because I'm the pet enthusiast of the group. I just, for example, last year, or I'm sorry, not last year, a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3, we had that huge heat wave and everyone was looking for a place for their pet to go that wasn't their car. And I kind of wonder if that would look something like boarding, or would those spaces look like something that people and pets could join?
yeah, so it's a great question, and sorry I forgot to mention it. It is listed under the additional robust facility infrastructure as pet spaces. But really what that looks like, I think there's opportunity to really figure that out on a space by space basis. So generally, when we think about resilience hubs, they're not generally overnight shelters, right? And so it's unlikely that these spaces would be, pet boarding spaces necessarily. But when we think about creating trust or supporting trusted community spaces where people want to go, where they can feel comforted and supported and get the resources they might need in disruptive events. Thinking about, this was actually brought up within the last meeting of, well, having a plan for pets, having an idea on people don't want to leave their pets at home, right? People don't want to leave to worry about their pets. And so really kind of thinking about that can help make these spaces more inclusive, and more effective in serving our population and, of course, our pets. Does that get answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Gracia?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for your clarifications, David. Another clarification I would like is that you state space for sheltering approximately 100 people. I would like to better understand how you came up with that number. And also, you just stated that sheltering is not overnight, and therefore where would these 100 or so people be going in the evenings? And at what point or at what level of catastrophe would we be, calling for the National Guard to pitch tents somewhere? Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so this is where it gets into kind of just the complications of thinking about resilience hubs within the context of emergency management as well, right? And so I think one way we want to think about this is these resilience hubs don't replace existing emergency management plans, especially in a major disaster like an earthquake or something that is going to displace a lot of folks, right? And so in that sense, it's not meant to be shelters in that way. This number was put in by, this was really advocated for by our emergency manager. And so again, this isn't necessarily thinking that all resilience hubs, thinking about back to our goal where we want a network of resilience hubs in the city of Issaquah. So not every resilience hub will necessarily have sheltering capacity. And this would be, for this, it would be overnight sheltering capacity is what our emergency manager had in mind for this. But thinking about what can we do to leverage this project and this idea to build the connections, build the partnerships so that we can perhaps find a space that in an emergency could shelter overnight up to 100 people. And I think that number 100, I'll have to ask him how he got that. I think that might have just been a number that he threw in for now, but I'll check with him and we can kind of fine tune that number a bit as well. But again, and the final thing I'll point out is this is in the ideal criteria piece, right? So thinking around maybe down the line, or maybe as we really expand this conversation or this topic and question of what resilience hubs look like for the city, this could be something that we're really trying to work towards versus something that is going to be an essential near-term aspect of the resilience hubs here in Issaquah.
Okay, so I've got maybe a couple of comments. One is thinking about geographic distribution as you think about where to site, multiple resilience hubs. And then so there's throughout the slide deck, there's words like, so most vulnerable, multicultural, marginalized groups. And so I think it would be helpful to think about which groups specifically you all mean and are referencing, and then also thinking about like the specific, maybe the more unique needs that those groups have with respect to facilities, because there's, when you talk about welcoming, that could be very different depending on the identities of the folks. And I'm especially thinking of like sheltering for 100 people, there might be some requirements or unique needs based on religion and things like that. So I think, maybe like shelters have probably solved for some of those problems, but just thinking, around like language, religion, families, just, all of those things, and especially when you start looking at like intersectional identities and what does that mean for folks to feel welcome. So I don't necessarily, I think these words are big and they're all in here, but kind of thinking about how those like add up together and what it means to be welcoming at these different layers. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful as we think about it. And I think narrowing in on the language that we want to use has been challenging, right? And I know this has come before the board before. What do we mean by different terms, right? And so I think that's playing a role in this conversation as well. And I definitely appreciate that. One note I'll just make on the geographic, it doesn't show up in these criteria right now. And that's, we'll look to add that. That wasn't something that had come up at the January meeting. I did expect it to come up, but nobody actually raised it, which is kind of funny. But within the solar plus storage grant, we actually have a piece written in there that we have to look at more than one neighborhood of Issaquah. So for instance, all three of those solar site designs and projects can't just be in Issaquah Center or historic downtown or anything. So specifically thinking about, we don't want all of our resilience hubs in one corner of the city. And I do know I'm over time, so I want to be.
I'll just elevate, Shay had one other question.
Oh, yes.
Question comment in the chat that got a lot of love and also taught me that fist bump is an emoji that Microsoft Teams allows you to use, which I did not know prior to 7:08 p.m. So Shay, I'll let you give voice to your question here though.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the needs of birthing people that may have to utilize these areas. Because my thought would be, would we be considering feeding spaces or even parent and children spaces within the sphere of health or more so in the sphere of sheltering, maybe both? I'm just kind of trying to get a better understanding of how that kind of plays into what you envision for this project.
Yeah, I think that's a really great aspect as well. And I think when we think about kind of a network of resilience hubs again, right? Certain spaces may be appropriate for a mother's room or a feeding space, for instance, and then again, others may not. But thinking about them as a network, right? Being able to make sure that we are thinking about which spaces do need that. And also for a space that might not have that, what resources or support or where can they point folks to make sure that they can access that support and have those spaces as well, right? So, and then also I think one of the other constraints that we will be working with, right, is that some of the facilities that might move forward in this are small. Mm-hmm. Right, so the food and clothing bank, if that is a space that folks want to move forward with, it's a small building, right? And so thinking about how do we take small spaces and make sure that they can be flexible use for whatever the community needs at any given moment, right? And while also planning for the fact that there might be a lot of needs in disruptive events, right? And so thinking about how do we plan for that as well. So that was kind of a long way of saying it's a great idea. I'll make sure it's part of the considerations as well. And it'll be definitely a great thing to include within planning for these sites.
Thank you.
David, do you have what you need from us?
I do. I think I have some great comments and points. I will incorporate those into this. And we are going to keep rolling on this. And I'll say I'm happy to come back and chat with you all about this again as much or as little as you want to hear about it. And also, since Lorna's part of the group, Lorna will be able to, I'm sure, keep you all updated as well.
Yeah, well, thank you and your team and all of your partners on this great work. It sounds like it's a real, just important part of building our city up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think with that, maybe can I suggest we take a 5-minute break and then reconvene at 7:20?
That sounds great.
I feel like this is going to be for you.
Ray, this is your chance. Grab Lindsay.
Oh, Lindsay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I feel horrible. But I don't know.
Oh my goodness. So if you take Park Drive, which is the main. Amazing. And you ride it all the way, and then it ends at like a circle park, called our village green. Oh, no, okay, so you're turning off the transit center. Do you know where Ladro, Cafe Ladro is?
Yes.
Okay, you're going up that way, up into the Highlands. Yeah, and then all the way up at the top, by Zeke's, we're at the Zeke's. And then we have our village green circle park, and it's right there on the edge.
That was question number one. And then question number two, were you aware as you start planning the different groups up there, that calendar that we created, was it you need a topic for any given month?
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, we think that, we haven't the new one because it just got approved.
Yes.
But last year we think Think, no,
Think.
think, sunk. We put your calendar, that calendar on our calendar, so we were aware of it. So especially because we didn't want to schedule any specific meetings on certain days, so we follow that as
And
well.
very different.
And yeah, in terms of holidays and things like that, for the most part,
Absolutely.
we wait for people to come to us.
Making sure they're.
It feels,
90% of the time. they're not.
it just doesn't feel good for me to go out and say, hey, we want to, we really want to celebrate Mexican culture this summer. Will you help us? Will you help us? It just feels really organizing to me. So we usually wait for people, or it comes up in more of a organic conversation, and I'm having a conversation with someone. Unless the community really requests something specific, and then I might kind of go out looking, put some feelers out, but in general, we try to have people say, hey, we want to do this. Do you think you can help us? Yeah.
I'm excited for these super community centers. So solar power.
Yes.
Community centers already getting sold.
Yeah, well, we're almost done. There's not really any more space for single family. So there's remaining to go in our apartment. And it's gonna be a few years before anything goes up. Yeah, but then there's 1,200 apartments going in. Cost for Starbucks in that place.
Yeah, big field
Mhm.
between that and Sweden and hospital.
Yep.
Yeah,
Over there.
that seems to be.
Yeah.
That's a good.
Yeah, and then there's another property, it's a gravel line.
It doesn't seem Brazilian.
And they're gonna build, I think, 800 apartments there.
Oh, wow, okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Please always reach out if you have any questions.
We can sit down.
Thanks for coming. Hopefully.
Yeah, everything is right here, but
You don't have to sit next to each other.
yeah, it's all the better to make eyes at each other.
We had a big table.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, come up anytime.
Really good. Yeah, seems like we turn the camera.
Oh,
We
yeah.
just.
That stuff should be illegal.
Go.
I just ordered.
This is not right.
For our Super Bowl party.
Oh.
So, everyone place to watch the Super Bowl, coming up, it's free.
Is that King County?
Ray, you might have to put your Taylor and your 49ers ire aside and just for the cookies.
Is he Niners fan then?
No, he's actively against both teams.
Oh, are you against one?
Just there for usher.
Like twice a year.
Oh, my word.
I really don't.
Okay.
There's different.
We get prizes for commercial bingo, so we support those people that want to watch the game. We have plenty of other things to do, lots of food.
Okay,
The budget
okay,
office.
yeah,
Well, you could learn
Better.
Snapchat.
Thank you for coming.
I'll be into telework, so,
okay,
yeah.
there we go. Yeah. A little different than us, where our work doesn't travel at home all that.
Hey, take care.
We can't take the pets home.
Thank you, Lindsay, for coming. We'll talk soon. And if you want to send me
I think.
the dates that you mentioned, I'll get it sort of included in the minutes.
Yeah, well, I'll send you my notes. Yeah, I typed out my notes and I didn't say half the things on them because I was trying to fast them.
So like the park planning folks, or the
So I'll just-
park maintenance is obviously there.
So it's all good.
Extra time.
Steve,
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
I know many of them. all-
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Oh, but you're right, they moved out.
Yes, please go for it. I'll let you drive.
Sure, well, why didn't we, I didn't know if, I put it on my map, like, I have it up, so I can,
Yeah,
Always fun when you can drive yourself. It probably is easier than, guess we can.
So I guess for our friends on Teams, when you've rejoined, can you please turn your cameras on or raise your hands so we know you're ready to go?
This seems to be a technical issue, but it's not on them. It's on us over here. There we go. Okay,
I got you.
we're good. Hi, Shay. Oh, fair.
Gotcha. Okay, Chris, yeah, we see your.
I was gonna do that here in person, so you're really setting the standard. I will not open my dinner while we're at the table here.
And so Christina, can you raise your hand or something so we know if you're ready to go? Christina?
Yes, I'm ready to go.
Okay,
Awesome.
great, thank you. All right, and so with that, I think we've got Jeff and Brian to share, return back to talk about, let's see, the high demand recreation program registration pilot, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Patty. I will kick it off and then pass the baton over to Brian. But thank you for having us back. Time flies. It was November that we were discussing with you and really, as a department, as we look at utilizing the equity framework on a number of things that we do. I think at that meeting, we talked about the joy we have as a department with the diversity of services we provide, from human services to park operations to rec programs, to designing parks. There's so many ways to really think from an equity standpoint, how are we delivering services? But what we brought to you in November was one that, quite honestly, is a little bit more of a nuanced challenge that we really wanted to have a discussion with you, and look forward to tonight's discussion as we look at piloting some ways we look at registration differently. But I guess I want to say this and preface this with, this is going to be a multi-year effort for us. If you remember the discussion, we have some immensely popular recreation programs, namely our swim lessons and our summer camps that fill within minutes. We can say that's a success, but that in a lot of ways isn't a success. It's not giving the access that we really want to provide. So from the conversation we had in November, we would just want to report back on some things that we're going to be instituting this year. Boy, calendar goes fast. We're going to be opening up and beginning to market registration for camps. So just want to talk through some of that, get your feedback and perspective as we're looking at this. And in many ways, maybe develop some measures that we want to take a look at this year as we institute this. And again, understanding this is going to be a multi-year effort. One last preface I want to make before handing it to Brian is that as we as staff looked at this over the last couple of months, I think we began to realize when we have a limited quantity product that we're delivering, right? So it's not a product that we could necessarily provide to everybody. There's a limited number of spots. So many of the things we're looking at from definition feel more like this is about accessibility and equality of access, not necessarily equity of access. And I guess I pose that to you all, and as we think of again what we're doing this year with increasing capacity and some things we're looking at resident registration priorities. I want to prepare for what feels like is going to be a conversation for a couple of years in terms of as we build and as we realize we're talking about access to a finite resource. And how do we handle that, and how do we work with that? And I'm going to stop there because I could keep going, because it just starts to morph into some survey work we're going to be doing with the community just around how we deliver recreation programs. So this starts to have tentacles. So I'm going to stop there and excited to get your feedback and share what we're going to be how we're tweaking our registration process this year.
Outstanding. No, thank you. And once again, I'm Brian Bergson. I'm the Recreation Services Manager for the Parks and Community Services Department. Recreation Services, as a reminder again, is like all the programs, activities, and events that are run through the Issaquah Community Center, Julius Moon Pool, Issaquah Senior Center, Pickering Barn, and all the programming and rental that take place in all the city parks and on the ball field. So that very basically is your Recreation Services Department or division. Okay. Apologies, I'm trying to figure out how there we go. Purpose tonight, Jeff sort of touched on this, it's to update you on the work that we've been doing in the registration process that we kind of touched on in our last meeting and said, hey, we shared a lot of different input. We're here to share with you sort of where we're at on that process. What we heard, Jeff again shared a bit on this one, but this kind of goes back to the discussion we had in November where we were sharing that some of these very popular programs with limited capacity. And we were talking about day camps, we talked about swim lessons, and a number of the folks in this room were like, been there, done that. Yes, it's a challenge, right? So that's kind of why we're addressing this one as the first part of this as we go through it. Sorry, my mouse is a little sensitive. Tonight, as like I said, as we discussed those different topics, we focused on 3 different items right now for 2024. That is what we're going to address and what we're going after right now at this moment. That's increasing the capacity of our popular programs. That's making the registration process easier, hopefully a little bit easier, especially for this fall residents. And then marketing and outreach and how we getting the word out to people. I'm going to go through each one of these in the next couple of slides, so we'll be able to go over those. With capacity increases, like I said, the two focus programs we have right now are camps and our swim lessons. I have just a little bit of data to share with you that I think hopefully you'll find it interesting, because I find it interesting as I was going through it and developing it with our teams. If you remember, beginning in 2024, Recreation Services we're gonna add 2 additional camps, right? So we're gonna add what's called an adventure camp, and we're also gonna add 2 weeks of a brand new Spanish speaking camp that we've never done before. That, along with some program modifications of some of our other camps that I'll get into as I start sharing a little bit of the data on that. We're planning for the following camps being offered. So I'm gonna list them to you so that you can sort of know what they are. I'll share the numbers with them, so I'm happy to repeat them. It's a bit of data, but I think it's important data to share. Also, I want to place a quick caveat to this. What I'm going to share is we rely heavily upon the school district for the use of spaces. So the numbers I'm going to give you assumes that we get the spaces we requested. If we don't get the spaces we request, or it's a smaller space than we request, the program would be modified and the numbers would be a little less. So we're still waiting. We work in the school district has been very great partners with us in the past, and we usually get what we request in some capacity. They work closely with us. So big nod to the school district, because a lot of these camps wouldn't even happen without them. But it is harder when they're not our facilities. Our facilities, we know exactly what we have and what we're able to use. We're still waiting to figure out what those uses are with the school district. So in 2023, we had a kinder camp, which is it was for grades K1. This year it's going to be for K1 is kindergarten, first grade. And then this year it's going to be for kindergarten to 2nd grade. It ran for 8 weeks with 40 campers per week. And this year we're planning on running the same camp, but with 50 campers. So we're going to expand that capacity by 10 kids per week, which will give us an additional 80 summer spaces within that one camp. Our Camp Qua, which is for grades 2nd through 5th, that runs for 9 weeks with 60 kids. That camp is staying the same numbers, same program with that one. Adventure Camp is for grades 5 through 7, and that's going to be a brand new camp. So that's 40 campers per week, which is going to add 320 additional spaces for camps this year. And then our Spanish speaking camp is, we're running that for 2 weeks for grades 2 through 5. That's 40 kids per week, so 80 additional camper spaces for this year in that new program. So pending the school district approval, we're talking 480 additional camp spaces that we'll have in 2024 that we didn't have in 2023.
You know what that averages per week, Brian? Just how many additional spots per week?
Way to hit me with a detailed question on that data. I could break it down, and I have it broken down into higher numbers.
Sorry.
But I want to say for the camps, it's in the 40-ish range, I think, per week.
40 additional spots a week.
Within.
You're getting some applause and some thumbs up.
Oh, outstanding. Hey, outstanding. Thank you so much.
But significant on a weekly. I just wanted to share from a weekly perspective.
Yes.
Again, many of these camps have from a family standpoint, it's that week by week lens. We're looking at a pretty sizable increase.
Yeah, it's 50 per week just within the camps that we're directly around. That doesn't include the Spanish speaking. And really quickly too, just want to share that, we also, and is modifying the program a little bit, is we were a lot more like, hey, it's our kinder camp was kindergarten, first grade. Our camp was 2nd through 5th grade. And then you have the little bit of the older camps. We've crossed them over a little bit. So kinder camp is now kindergarten through 2nd grade. Camp Qual runs 2nd through 5th, and then Adventure Camp is 5th through 7th, right? So the 2nd and 5th grades, depending on, those can be big transitional periods too. Sometimes your kid's like, yeah, 2nd grade, ready to be in there, some older kids. Well, they might want to stay in kindergarten. Or they're a 5th grader that's, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be some 6th and 7th graders. We don't want to have that. So if they don't, they can stay in Camp Qual, or if they're totally really launched, with a lot of them are, they can be in Adventure Camp. So that is also going to help us spread out the youth a little bit. So yeah, it's gonna be really exciting. And we're excited to see how some of these changes take effect this year. With the swim lessons, going into that one a little bit, beginning in 2024, the swim lesson program, at the very beginning of this year, we increased all the swim lesson classes by 1 participant. Doesn't seem like much, so 1 student more per class, right? But in 2023, we had 3,041 spots available within the swim lesson program. In 2024, we're projecting that we're going to have 3,985 spots available. So that's 944 additional swim lesson spaces in 2024 than we had in 2023. And just for a percentage, this percentage comes up, that's a 31% increase in the available swimming lessons that we're going to have. That's if everything's the same as 2023 as it will be in 2024. And 2024 is actually probably going to be a little bit bigger, more robust lesson program than we had in 23. So conservatively, I think we're saying 944 additional spaces.
And those of you that have had kids in swim lessons know ratio is really, really important. And so again, hats off to the school staff as we're looking at that pretty sizable percentage increase. We want to do it in a way that still keeps a really important ratio, instructor to child ratio.
Very much so. And I'd say that our ratios we have a lot more teacher to student, a lot less kids per class than a lot of other places do. We really put a high priority. It gives each kid a little bit more attention for that class. That's a really, like Jeff was saying, it's a very important piece of the instruction for us. Next topic is the resident registration process that we talked about. Like I said, thanks for the discussion on this last November. We discussed a whole bunch of different things. One of the things we talked about was what would it look like if we did create a little bit of a different program for our registrations and including a piece of the resident component, right? Quick reminder, people can register with us on the phone. They can do it in person. They can do it online, right? So that's the venues. It's almost any way you want. In previous years, registration was open at one time for City of Issaquah residents and City of Issaquah non-residents at the same time. In 2024, our popular programs, the capacity, such as camps and swim lessons that we run, it just, they're filling so quickly. We have implemented an opportunity for registration for the citizens, sounding less as the residents in this club. I've learned that one. That's one of my learning pieces in my equity piece is saying residents of this club are for citizens. So apologies for that. I am really working hard on some of my own what's that word? It's the things you don't know, but you actually do. Culture bump? No, not culture bump. When you got things that you do that you aren't aware of, like saying that, like not using. It doesn't matter. I'm there, but I'm obviously losing everybody. No worries. We'll move on. So what we've done is we've implemented a resident registration period for summer camps. What that's going to look like is we're going to do it a week prior, right? So this year, and information just came out where part of this gets a little bit more marketing and outreach, but we just put out the information that our residents are going to be able to register for camps on March 16th. And then the open registration is on March 23rd, right? So that's a full week difference there. With our swim lessons, beginning in April for our spring 1 session, We're gonna do swim lessons just a little bit differently. We're gonna have them, there's gonna be a 3-day difference. So the resident registration is gonna be on April 5th. And then the open registration for everybody will be on April 8th. That's a Friday to a Monday. A little bit of reasoning behind that is, and please know that everything I'm sharing tonight is totally fluid. We're doing what we feel is best, but we are gonna do it, we're gonna assess it and change it as needed to make it better, right? If that is intended. So the swim lessons, that shorter window, they feel so fast, right? If you've tried in literally minutes, right? So they fill really quickly. It's a little bit more streamlined process for filling that out. So the 3 days will still be plenty of time to help people that maybe are having challenges getting registered. The day camps have a lot more information, right? Lots to fill out, a lot more information. That week's gonna give us a full week before the open registration to help any Issaquah residents get registered. So we can help walk. Like I was talking like in November, we talked about, you know, the programs that don't have capacity, we can just run them. It's not too big of an issue because we can work with people to get them in there. So it's when these ones that fill so quickly, and then if they're not, you know, they don't have the technology or they don't know exactly what they're doing, and then they just miss it. And that's really tough when you live in Issaquah and you're like, wow, a bunch of people that don't live in Issaquah got in and I didn't get in. So it'll be real interesting to see how this works, and we're excited to see how quick does it get full.
I can add to that too, Brian. Yeah, it also gives us that time, that week gives us time to work through scholarship information and other things that I know we talked about with the team. As we talked with the recreation team and really looked through pros and cons of, do we consider a lottery? Do we consider this sort of resident registration? We really felt like resident registration felt like the best first step to really pilot this. Because as we operate our facilities, as Brian said, whether it's the pool or the community center, or the senior center, we're not an exclusive resident only club. And yet we recognize and want to make very sure and very, very clear, our residents support those facilities in a different way. They support them differently than our non-residents do. And as we market this, we're prepared, and certainly preparing staff. I'm prepared as a director, and we're all prepared we'll have some non-residents who this isn't necessarily going to be the greatest news, but we want to work with those non-residents and make them certainly aware. We want our facilities accessible and available to them, but when it comes to programs that fill up so fast, we really feel like piloting a resident registration, a resident pre-registration period is really, really important. So.
No, thank you. Absolutely. No, it's big time helpful. Yeah. So I'll move on to and thank you for bringing up the scholarship piece, because that is part of that week time frame. Is sometimes, especially when you start talking to somebody, I can't tell you how many times we've talked to a customer and, you know, it's sort of like you start talking to them, oh, would you be interested in the scholarship? You know, and they're like, oh, what does, you know, sometimes if they don't know, then we're able to share that with them, get them signed up, and then get them registered so that you know, is non-issue for them. Going back to the camps really quick, I did want to remind everybody that, you know, we offer the camps where I'm talking about are the camps that are directly run by a recreation services team, you know, most of them are housed in the community center. We also offer a large variety of camps. I mean, tons of camps that we do with our partners. So those often have a lot more capacity. There's half-day camps, there's full-day camps. So we also offer a variety of camps amongst all of our partner organizations. Those camps as well will be open for that pre-registration with the residents, because all of our camps are going to be open for registration at the same time. So the residents will have that extra week for all those camps as well.
That's a Lego camp and sports camp. And,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you all want to take any questions that are coming up at this time, or do you have a question pause coming up?
Oh, I'm good either way.
Okay, Christina, you have a great question in the chat, and I don't want us to miss it. So would you like to ask it?
Well, it is not a question, it is more like a comment, because I would like to put the point table. Maybe you can consider to block a specific amount of spaces for people who are not using technology, as you mentioned it before. So it is good for them, so they can go in person and block. Thank you. That's all.
No, thank you. I remember that comment from the first meeting, and absolutely that is one of the items on our list to be aware of. No, thank you for that.
Lucrecia, have a comment?
So, Lucrecia, you had your hand up, but then
Yes, so to piggyback on what Cristina is saying, I would like to know how you are taking into consideration the different groups that make up our community. And what I mean by that is not only the people who have limited access to technology, but in addition to, let's say, if we know that our community is made up of, and these numbers are just made up, by the way, for my comment, I don't know what the numbers are, but accessing Issaquah School District data, if you recognize that, let's say 25% of the students are on free and reduced lunch, and during the pandemic, we established that 30% of our students do not have access to technology at home, be it via computer or internet, etc. Are we making allotments for that sort of information to inform you so that when people go to sign up, we have something in place to capture those people in terms of giving them equitable access to these courses that you are offering? Thank you.
Yeah, it's, am I hearing you correctly, is how are we reaching out to those folks and families that may not have as much access as others do to that information? Is that what I'm?
So not just access, but like, for example, like to Christina's point, saying, if we know that there are 30% of students who are part of the free and reduced lunch, and we know that they do not have computers at home or they do not have internet, that we should be providing 30% of those slots to students who meet that criteria. Whatever criteria it is that we are establishing as not being equitable, making sure that that criteria is, allotted representation, for a lack of better words. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. That's a great point. Good comment.
Yeah, if I can add, and I know, Brian, you're going to touch on this with marketing and outreach, as we look at having a much longer runway for getting information out for, in particular, camps and swim lessons, we're going to be working with our partners in the Department of Human Services to make sure we're getting that information out, sort of all population groups. And I think as we learn or see if there's need for assistance or support as registration periods are coming, we want to be able to adapt to that. Both of your comments, Christina and Lucrecia, were really good and honestly speak to, I think, we're trying to be realistic with the capacity we have this year. I think there's a lot more data that we still need to collect as we're sort of piloting this first step. I don't know that we know enough this year to say, hey, let's absolutely set aside X number of spots for again a small number of our programs, but these programs that are so immensely popular. But I think we still have more work ahead. This is not a 1 year, hey, we've done it kind of thing.
Well said.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for contributing your opinion or your feedback on my question. I appreciate it.
Christina, you had your hand up again.
Yes, basically is that I would like to comment. Maybe we cannot know exactly how much or how many people are able to use the computers or technology, but at least we can block the some specific spaces for 1 or 2 days, because I know in my experience when I go into the website and try to block, it is so quickly, it is filling so quickly, so I cannot do it. It is like 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes and that's or less. When you are checking the classes, everything is gone. So that's why I was thinking it's good to keep at least few spaces.
Really good. We're hoping that window changes with the increased number of spots and at least again, allowing residents to have that early access.
That's where I was gonna go with that one, is, yeah, that we're hoping that window of like for camp, that week is gonna give those, yeah, that it hopefully won't matter to an Issaquah resident. That they will have that full week to get registered. If there's any problems, we can work through them with them. The important thing is getting the word out to the people to make sure that everyone's getting that word. If they are interested in a camp, that they have that, and they know about it and can reach out to us for that assistance and be there for them.
So I know you haven't quite finished your presentation, but so I'm thinking about, so Jeff, your comment about equality of access versus like equity, and so I've been just kind of thinking a little bit more about that. So when I think about swim lessons and summer camps, and I'm thinking about equity, there's access, right? So people, low income families on for reduced lunch. There's, I think, not just that, but if we look at school related data, we know like summer camps can help prevent summer slide, so keep kids caught up for school the following year. There's social emotional skill development, executive functioning. So there's all these benefits for that access to summer camps. When I think about swim lessons, I know that there are certain demographic groups that die more from drowning than other groups. So, there's just all of these like equity dimensions that getting upstream with camps and lessons can help offset and mitigate, like different health indicators, drowning, these educational success, measures along the way. The disparities exist as soon as kids enter, before they enter kindergarten, and the gaps keep widening as, students progress. And so when I think about equity, I think there is an opportunity for you all to, and I don't have the answer, but to be thinking about that as these are access points for kids to have better life outcomes. And so access is one thing. So I guess, I think about, so you've increased capacity and you're giving preference to residents. Do you know, so I guess 2023 and earlier, what your demographic profile of kids for swim lessons are in terms of like race, ethnicity, and how that tracks with like educational success measures. And then similarly, swim lessons, who has access to pools, because that has been a historical barrier to certain groups by design. So when we think about all of that, I think those are the opportunities you all have to redress kind of historical inequities and government policies. So I just want to put that out there for just consideration. I know you're focused on equality of access, but I guess I do wonder to what degree we're going to see some demographic changes with what your new kind of capacity changes in registration is. Is it going to substantially increase access to groups who might need access to affordable swim lessons, access to pools, access to, higher quality summer programming? So to me, that's the big question. I'm not sure you're touching upon.
And I don't think we are, and you're so spot on, and it's great feedback. And again, as maybe I awkwardly said in the introduction, right? This framework conversation we had in November around registration is important, but it really starts to overlap into recreation program, into how we build, how we deliver recreation programs, that I think your questions are incredibly spot on. I don't know that we have all those data points at this juncture, but we need to continue to get them.
I'd encourage
We
you
have,
to.
you know, we have voluntary, our registrants have the voluntary opportunity to give demographic information. So it's not a high return on knowing some of those. Your comment about pools and lessons are so spot on, to the point that Mayor and I were having a conversation earlier this week about that you may or may not be aware, we're looking at how we can add pool capacity at a very overprescribed pool. And as we add that capacity, we both got really excited about what would it look like to offer lessons, or the first session of lesson is free to everybody. Or let's go back and let's partner with the schools, and let's partner with all fourth graders, all fifth graders have, right? I mean, there's just some things that we can do that are not necessarily it's not this topic of registration, but it really opens up, and thank you for that, because as we as recreation professionals do start talking about registration and access to registration, we naturally then start going, well, how are we delivering the programs, and how might we model that or do that differently? So thank you. And the two topics definitely intersect.
Yeah, so I
A
just,
lot more work for us. to
yeah,
do.
we should continue to,
A lot more work for us to do. Yeah.
How many years of data do you have access to, as far as the registrants that have been able to get?
Yeah, it's 2026. I was thinking like, I mean, we got quite a few. I mean, the whole COVID years are a little interesting. I was just thinking, like, as you were talking, I'm thinking about a registration system of what data pieces is it collecting, and can we extrapolate that? What you're asking, can we pull that from the system? I have to look into that and see what we have. But it's as I agree, Jeff, you're spot on. I'm just curious. I'm like, can our system pull that data, and do we have it in there?
So we've shifted to online registration in 2018, 19, just before the pandemic. So we have data, I think, and I'm going to say this, I'm pretty certain, as I think of the registration form, when we ask some of those demographic questions, age, ethnicity, etc., that's all voluntary. And I don't think our collection rate is all that high. I think most opt out. So, you know, I agree that it would be very useful to begin to get that. There's a policy shift we would need to make to say, hey, that's not voluntary. We really want to collect that. And obviously we can't mandate it, but how do we emphasize that more to maybe get a higher return?
I mean, I think you could use rough estimates of demographics and use an overlay of what the school report card for Issaquah School District or the surrounding school districts to kind of, it's not going to be like the rigor of a research study, but there could be some.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Insights you can glean from that.
And we're getting some of that as you might remember, we shifted our scholarship program to be far more accessible. I think as we begin to understand what the data we're getting from that is going to be helpful in this bigger picture of how and who are we delivering, and how are we packaging the delivery of recreation programs to make sure we're making it more equitably accessible to all of our residents. Yeah.
Well, thank you for indulging that.
No, you give me some good notes to do some little bit of research on, so thank you.
I know we're nearing the end of time. Would you like?
Yeah, as I say, marketing outreach, and we've had a lot of discussion and feedback. I would like to just, really quickly, and this is because it's me and it's the people I get to work with. Going through this list of stuff is like really, it looks, oh, hey, yeah, we're increasing programs and camps. there is a large body of work that goes on with this. Huge. It's hard to explain how much work goes on it. And so I'm just giving a shout out to the rec services team that just is doing a lot of the work on that, because it's a big lift and everybody's 100% behind it and excited for it because it's making the process better. So a shout out to too many names, I can't name them, but the rec services teams. And those
Can I echo that, Brian? Because I too was gonna say in closing, 40 additional spots a week, that has dominoes. That's that many more part-time staff. That's that many more, I mean, there's a lot of logistics and dynamics that go into that.
Plus, right.
We're excited. We feel like this is just a little incremental step, and we really, again, look forward to what's produced from it, but it's not, this isn't light. And if I could say, this shift to resident registration this week ahead is gonna have, there's a lot of shift that goes into that, and working with our GIS folks and making sure we're ready, right? And part of this outreach is getting this news out to the community 5-6 weeks ahead of time, so they can understand. And hey, are you curious if you're a resident or not? Here, please do this research ahead of time. We're really gonna do all we can to make that registration date not feel so crazy, but customers are able to plan and prepare for that too. So a lot of moving parts, as Brian said. Hats off to Brian and the recreation team.
Yeah, we got, like, so we had a little information go out already through that city news blast, and then next week or two, we're gonna have flyers, brochures going out to all the elementary schools in the Issaquah School District. And then we also have some other social media follow-ups that will be coming as we're going. So we're well ahead of this, trying to get word out there, right? And then also, like Jeff was saying, talking with our human services, how are we trying to get it just to all facets? Because there's a lot of people that know about the information. How do we get the ones that aren't hearing from us too?
Well, you all are doing, I mean, I think you can tell from our passion, you know, in this time, you are doing this very important community. And so thank you and your teams for.
Well, thanks for having us. It's, pleasure.
Lucretia?
I believe I brought this up the last time we spoke, but I'm still wondering if there is any way to partner with the school district, since the school district is able to identify those students who have either language barriers and or financial barriers. As they're doing an intake and or registration, is there a way where we could add to those forms a simple thing like, are you interested in swimming lessons for your child? Or if this was made available to you, would you be interested? And therefore, you basically already have the information as to how many people we have from those demographics who are wanting to access these services, and maybe through the school district access those people. It's, to me, it just seems like if we already have the data somewhere, how do we access that data so that we have a more equitable representation of our community? Just a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coincidentally, Brian and I have a meeting with the school district on Friday to some of the pretty key school district leadership and talking about pool and some other things. So it's a great point. We'll bring that up. We've certainly talked to them about it. There's some limited information that they can provide us since we're not school district employees, but it's a great point. And we're constantly trying to figure out how we can best partner so that, you know, their students are our customers are their students. How are we working together and making sure we're abiding by all privacy rules and laws?
Again, thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time here with us.
Thanks.
And I think we're.
We'll do one last thing, right?
Right, so because I think we're skipping culturally and linguistically diverse support for seniors.
Yes, I'll provide a quick update. So Alicia from the circle was going to join us. She and I did not have a chance to connect this week. My email ended up in her spam. And so we're gonna connect ahead of the March meeting. And so she'll come to share some perspectives and input at our March meeting around this topic. So you'll see that show up on our upcoming agenda.
Thanks, Dale. And I think the last agenda item we have is a close and process check. And I think last month we talked about it being maybe just like a one-word checkout. Like, how are you feeling at the end of the meeting today? And let's just popcorn out, folks. One word or takeaway maybe that you have from today's meeting.
And other staff you should feel free to participate.
Oh, right.
I'm sorry, Karthik, I cut you off.
That was a word.
Trey?
Yeah, Trey had a word for us.
Yes, because I was gonna say robust. I loved the conversation. I think we got some things accomplished.
Mhm.
And Karthik?
Oh, yeah, again, inspired.
Inspired. Fantastic. Christina? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, just I don't want to leave without telling something about the previous information. I was thinking you saw something about the Spanish immersion for summer camps.
Mhm.
So I was, why just Spanish? Why not other languages?
Great question.
Yeah, great question. The community down in Issaquah Valley Elementary, the school, the circle, a bunch of the parents actually approached us on that. And we're looking to run a pilot, a program. We thought it was, because we had so much community interest from that group that we figured it was a great opportunity to pilot with them. We had some discussions with the school district. We had some discussions with this group. They have a program that is, what is it? It's an immersion program where they speak Spanish at that school. And so they just had a lot of energy and resources behind it. So we're working with them to pilot it this year to see how this will work. And, maybe we can build off these types of things in the future.
And make the camp available to the entire community, right?
Yeah.
Not just IBE, yeah.
Right, yeah, no, thank you. Yes, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, Christina, do
Okay,
you have,
thank
yeah. Christina, what's your party word?
you. Good night. It is a pleasure. I will meet you next time.
Rick,
Better connected.
better connected.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see, Lucrecia.
Yes, I believe I feel very hopeful. I truly appreciate each of the presenters and your effort to answer our questions when our questions are, at least for me, some of my questions are not necessarily the best worded, but you parsed out the meaning, and I truly appreciate how you're meeting me and others more than halfway in order to move forward with being more inclusive in our community. And I truly appreciate that. Thank you.
Brian, did you?
I feel with appreciative. I appreciate the time you guys gave us. I appreciate the input and I appreciate this just conversation. I appreciate especially that you guys are actually engaged with the stuff that we do. So thank you for that, because it's always nice to hear from people that actually really enjoy what we do and have that passion for it. So thank you.
Mhm.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I'll go with, how will we know?
Say it fast and it's one word.
How will we know? How will we know?
Okay. And, yeah,
Yeah, wow, one word. There's like three I could say real fast. I would just say encouraged. I'm encouraged. We as a department are so committed to serving the entire community and just encouraged to have an equity board like this, and just your perspective that we're able to bounce off and get honest feedback and just encouraged. This is helping us move the needle.
and I'll say energized for my word. And I think so. I think everyone is gone. And with that, I will move us to adjournment. So our next meeting is currently scheduled for March 6th. At our normal first Wednesday of the month. I adjourn this meeting at 8:06 p.m. Have a lovely meeting, everyone, and thanks so much for engaging with us tonight. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.